Yeah, so in this session, we want to talk about transforming your leadership. And when we are talking about transforming your leadership, we are talking about your journey and engagement with life through personal leadership. We've had a whole session, very powerful session on personal leadership. You can see a little bit of overlap between personal leadership and transforming your leadership. In other words, what we are trying to say is that leadership does not really begins with people. It begins with you. The problem with a lot of people is that they want to go to the community and begin to lead people. That is not where leadership starts from. Leadership really starts from you, and and it has to continue with you, and for you to be able to serve your gifts to the world. So, in transforming your leadership, there are two basic questions you need to answer. The question to answer is, how do I begin my personal leadership journey? We've heard so much about how to do that, but that is one of the questions I want you to continue to ponder in your mind as we go through this training session. How do I begin my personal leadership journey? And the second question you will also need to ponder is to ask yourself, how do I engage with life? And that is why we said that transforming your leadership is your journey and your engagement with life through personal leadership. Now, we want to talk about how to become a transformed leader. Just give me a moment. I want to spotlight for everyone. Yeah. So how do I become sorry about that. So how do I become a transformed leader? I believe we all desire to change our world, whether it is our church, our place of work, our community, or wherever you find yourself. Even as a chaplain, we want to change the life of people that we are serving. But we need to understand that the journey to changing our world begins with experiencing personal transformation. That is where the journey begins from. Transformation doesn't begin with changing things. Transformation begins with changing yourself. John Maxwell, a highly revered mentor of mine, uh, made this statement. He said, "When we are foolish, we want to conquer the world, but when we are wise, we want to conquer ourselves." How true this statement is. I have seen a lot of people who are trying to conquer the world. They want to take over territory. Uh, I'm sure we've all heard about a man named Napoleon, whose sole aim was to conquer the entire world. He tried a bit, but at the end of it all, he wasn't able to capture the entire world. And that is to tell you that it is a foolish idea for any man to just rise up one day to say he wants to conquer the world. And I'm sure you also know about a man called Adolf Hitler, who also tried as much as possible uh, to conquer the entire world. in the process of doing so, he also failed. Uh, so there have been people in the time past who have attempted uh, to conquer the entire world. But I want to let you know that that is a very is an impossible task to accomplish, to conquer the entire world. Rather than thinking of conquering the entire world, I want you to focus more on conquering yourself. Conquering yourself. You see, it is more difficult to work on yourself than to work on other people. To lead other people is easy. You know, you can easily direct people, you can easily uh, reorganize people to do things, but the most difficult aspect of leadership is leading yourself, and that is what you want to focus on, to conquer yourself. There is this story I love to share about our intention to become a transformed leader. Is the story of a pastor uh, who had a 4-year-old son, and this pastor was, thank God, we are all pastors here, so this shouldn't be a strange story to us. So this pastor was trying to prepare a sermon for Sunday, like we pastors normally do. And when you want to prepare a sermon, you are looking for that quietness where inspiration will come and you'll begin to write your point out, and you know you are satisfied with what you are going to preach. But when the sermon is not going as planned, it can really be very frustrating. So this pastor was struggling to find a sermon topic and also to develop the point he was going to preach on. So this pastor uh, was in his study, and all of a sudden, the 4-year-old boy came rushing. And then, as little boy, he didn't know what the father was trying to accomplish. So he began to distract, he began to jump on the man, began to cause chaos in the study. And the man was just confused. What will I do to this boy to engage him so that I can have time to concentrate on my sermon? So on the table of this pastor was a map of the world. So the man decided to shred the map of the world into pieces to form something like a puzzle, and into little pieces, and decided to give this little boy an assignment to do. And what was the assignment? He gave the boy an assignment to fix the world. So he moved the boy to another room so that the boy can be busy with fixing the world. But when this little boy got to the room, he discovered that at the back of those shredded pieces of the map of the world was the image of a man. So because it was easier for the boy to relate with the man than with the world, so the boy decided to flip all the shredded pieces over to where we have the image of the man. So the little boy decided to fix the man because it was easier to puzzle the image of the man together than to puzzle the image of the world. So in less than 10 minutes, this boy was able to fix the man. And then what he did was to just flip the puzzle of the man. And here we go. The world has been fixed. So in less than 10 minutes, this boy ran back to his father. Daddy, 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 I have been able to fix the world. And the father was surprised and asked him, how were you able to do it so quickly? And the boy replied, he said, it's so simple, daddy. He said, at the back of the world is the image of the man. All I needed to do was to fix the man, and by fixing the man, I was able to fix the world. Wow. This father that has been struggling to find a sermon topic for the Sunday suddenly got an idea that if you can fix the man, then you can fix the world. And he was able to prepare a wonderful sermon for the Sunday service. Now, what is the moral lesson of this story? The moral lesson of this story is that for you to fix the world, you will need to first fix the man. So the question we want to ask ourselves is, how do we fix or transform the man? So I believe by this time we want to begin to roll up our sleeves, so that we can begin to get to work on how we can fix or transform the man. There are three major approaches to fixing or transforming the man. Number one is by not conforming to the pattern, standard, and custom of this world. If you want to fix the man, that man must not take after the pattern or the standard or the custom of this world. You must not copy and fit yourself into the behavior and the culture. And the culture could be superficial values of this world without thinking. So you must not allow the world to mold you into its own image. You want to be distinct. You want to be the one to influence the culture of the world. You want to be the one to impose the good values that will transform the world. You are not the one that is being drifted here and there by every wind of what is in vogue in the world. So you are not conforming yourself to the pattern and the standard or the custom of this world. So therefore, in trying to fix the man or transform the man, there are things you need to avoid. Number one, you need to avoid popular opinion. And what does the popular opinion say? Popular opinion often says, if you cannot beat them, then join them. That is an anonymous quote. I'm sure we've all heard people say, if you cannot beat them, then you have to join them. That is what I call living by popular opinion. And the intention of this phrase is to set us up for a conformist agenda. And as somebody that wants to bring transformation into the world, you don't want to conform according to the pattern of this world. So rather than joining them, you want to impose a different kind of culture in the world. Another thing to avoid in fixing or transforming the man is that you must avoid maintaining the status quo. And what does the status quo say? According to Albert Einstein, he says insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. You see, one of the greatest challenge we have in Africa is maintaining the status quo. We just want things to continue to be the way they are. We just want to continue to do things the way we have always known to do it. But believe me, if you truly want to bring a transformation to the society whether to your church, whether to the chaplaincy unit you are serving, or to your community, or to the society, or to the nation. You must destroy the status quo. You must not be among those who are always maintaining the status quo. And funnily, one of the agenda of the conformists is that all they want to establish for us is the proof of insanity, according to what Herbert Einstein said. That is what the conformist agenda wants us to continue to do. That is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, thinking we are going to arrive at a different result. But that is not the way to get a different result. If you want a different result from what you have been getting, you need to change your approach. You need to change the way you have been doing things. Now, the second thing you need to do to fix the man or to transform the man is that you have to continue to renew your mind by the renewal of your mind. And what do I mean by the renewal of your mind? It means that you have to develop growth plans to educate your mind intentionally. You must develop a growth plan to educate your mind intentionally. And how do you do this? There are three major ways through which you can develop a growth plan to educate your mind intentionally. Number one is through progressive incremental change as you grow as a person. What do I mean by that? It simply means trying to cultivate the habit of learning or the attitude of learning something every day. That means you are wiser today than the way you were yesterday. That means no matter how little that new knowledge is, make sure every day of your life you learn something new. That is how to renew your mind. That is how to transform the mind, by the renewal of the mind through incremental or progressive incremental change as you grow as a person. Learn something new every day. Don't think that all that you have known is all there is to know. There is always room to learn something new. Another way through which you can develop a growth plan or to renew your mind is by focusing on good values. Focusing on good values. You know, the scripture says, I think it was Paul the Apostle who was admonishing the Philippians. He said, whatsoever is good, whatsoever is honorable, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is of good report, whatsoever is of value, whatsoever is of great virtue, he said, think on these things. So you have to focus your attention on things that delivers value to you, not on things that are not really important. There are certain things people send to me on WhatsApp or wherever, and they want me to click on them and just watch them, or I don't know, maybe they want me to read the message. Let me tell you, it is not all those messages that I click or that I watch, because I am conscious of the kind of values I build into myself. anything that does not add positively to my already adopted values, I don't give room for such things to come into my life. Another way through which you can continue to develop your growth plan is by also focusing on ethical attitude. Your ethical attitude focus on your ability to adjudge what is right or wrong. And you are not just adjudging them mentally, but you are also practicing what is right and wrong. So you have to focus on good value and ethical attitude. So the third way to fix or transform the man is by learning to know or proving what is good and universally acceptable. You see, one thing about principles is that a principle, if it is a good principle, if it works in the US, it will work in Canada, it will work in Nigeria, it will work in Japan, it will work in South Korea, it will work in Indonesia, it will work anywhere in this world. And that is what you need to learn to know. You need to learn to know and prove what is good and universally acceptable. And what do I mean by this? What I mean is that you want to evaluate everything that you go through in life. You want to evaluate every experience, every occurrence that has taken place in your life. And that is why I love what John Maxwell says so much. He said, experience isn't the best teacher. We've always had people tell us when we were younger, perhaps you still have that, you still hold on to that principle now, where people tell you that experience is the best teacher. I had people tell me that when I was younger, but as I began to mature, I began to discover that experience isn't really the best teacher. It is evaluated experience that is the best teacher. You know, when you go through certain experiences and you don't learn something from those experiences, it doesn't deliver any value to you. So, in other words, the chances of repeating that same experience is almost certain. But when you are able to evaluate an experience and you are able to adapt the positive lessons to yourself and discard the negative consequences, then it shows that you have been able to learn something that is adding to you positively. So in transforming the man, you want to keep on evaluating every experience, every encounter that you go through in life. So we now move to transforming habit of a leader. Now, in talking about the transforming habit of a leader, I want to do a little bit ground clearing here. And what do I mean by doing a little ground clearing? It is by trying to debunk certain myths around leadership. We want to begin by solving the riddle around leadership. You know, in talking about transforming habits of a leader, let's start by trying to solve certain riddles that surrounds leadership. I know my friend did so much on debunking a lot of myths around leadership. I'm going to focus on three of them here because I consider these three to be an essential myth or essential myths that we need to debunk around leadership. Number one, there is a myth that says that leaders are born and not made. Perhaps maybe you are also thinking that way, like the Greek philosophers often taught that leaders are always born. They believe that you can't make a leader. The leader has to be born. You have to be born to rule. So that is one myth around leadership. The second myth around leadership is that certain people believe that leaders must hold a position or a rank or a title to be qualified as a leader. But I want you to know that position or title is the lowest form of leadership. I'm not saying there is something wrong with having a title or position, but that is the least you can have when we are talking of leadership. Perhaps we can say that that is the beginning of leadership, but that is not the end in itself. But unfortunately, that is where a lot of people are focusing their leadership attention on. Hey, I have a title. Hey, I have a position. Hey, I have a rank. That is the lowest form of leadership. And I would like to advise that you don't wait before somebody make you a leader through a position or title before you begin to think like a leader. Be mindful that we are all respectable leaders in all our respective domain or circle of influence. Every one of us on this platform, let's forget that we are pastors. In our own right, we are leaders. And I often tell people that whenever you find yourself in a situation whereby you need to make decision on behalf of two or more people, then you're already involved in leadership. Whether you are a parent, whether you are a class coordinator, whether you are a priest or a pastor, or whether you are a local government executive chairman, whether you are a governor, whether you are a senator, whether you are the president of a nation, every one of these leaders that I have mentioned happens to make decisions on behalf of people. And that is what qualifies them as a leader, not because of the title, but because they have a responsibility towards people. Another myth around leadership is that people believe that leaders must be flawless. But I like to say that leaders are not flawless. They do have at least a blind spot. But however, there is a word of caution here. That is not to say that leaders are to keep on making mistakes perpetually, all the time in their leadership responsibility. What we are saying is that occasionally, I like you to mark the word occasionally, leaders can make mistakes, but they are not to be making mistakes on a consistent basis. When a leader continue to make mistakes on a consistent basis, then that leader has what we call, or what I call, a character flaw. That is not the kind of leadership we are talking about. But I think these three myths around leadership is important for us to look into so that we will know what we are dealing with. That leaders are not born, they are also made. So who is qualified to be called a leader? Leadership is accessible to all and sundry. There are no individuals that are specifically born to be leaders, like the Greek philosophers have told us. Ironically, there is no unborn leader. Perhaps maybe you have seen a leader who was never born. Even Jesus, who was, or let me say not was, who is the leader of all, had to be born. He was born, and in the process of being born, he was also made. You remember at the age of 12, he was always in the temple, uh, deliberating with doctors and lawyers of the law, asking them questions, and they, in the same process, asking him questions. What was he doing? He was developing his leadership skill at that point in time. So leaders are not just born, they are also made. Leaders are not people that have position, title, or ranks, even though it can begin from that point. But that is not what makes you a leader. And leaders are not flawless. They do have at least a blind spot. You know, there are two things for me personally that I discovered when I assumed my first leadership responsibility. My first major leadership responsibility was given to me in year 2000, I think. That was when I was made the chairman of House Fellowship Committee. I think that was the first leadership responsibility that I will ever assumed. And do you know that in discharging this responsibility, I quickly understand that as a leader, you will always see what other people cannot see. That was the first realization I had as a leader. That as a leader, you will always see what people cannot see. And that is okay. And that is why you are called a leader. And that is why people want to follow you, because you are taking people on a journey. And the second thing I also discovered as a leader was that as a leader, you will also discover that you have a blind spot. There are certain things that will be so obvious to other people that you won't necessarily have an idea about it. Now, these two things, I was not taught them. I personally discovered them upon my assumption of a leadership responsibility. That as a leader, you will see more than what other people see. And as a leader, you must always understand that you have a limitation. So, precondition for becoming a leader. Now, when we are talking about leadership, who should be made a leader? How do we qualify somebody to be called a leader? How can we adjudge that you are now a leader? So there are certain things that must be in place. And if these preconditions are not there, then please note that you are not a leader. You may be carrying title, you may be doing what leaders do, but you are not a leader if you don't possess these preconditions. The first precondition for becoming a leader is that a leader must be well thought of as being reputable. That is the first thing you want to have as a leader. You want to have a reputation. You want to be a man or a woman of high repute. And not only that, you also want to be a man or a woman of credibility. So a leader must be well thought of as being reputable and credible. This is very crucial and very fundamental. And when I talk about reputation, we are talking about when a leader is known to be very good in a specific area of vocation. That is your reputation. That is what people see in you and they respect you for it. When you can demonstrate your ability in a particular area of giftedness, then you are judged to be reputable. But you are not just reputable for the short term. You must now consistently continue to remain reputable over a long period of time until that reputation graduates into credibility. You see, people are not going to follow you alone because you are reputable. What people are looking for in a leader is the credibility of a leader. You have to be a consistent performer of that which people already know you for. You have to consistently deliver. You have to consistently perform before people can adjudge you to be credible. So that is very, very fundamental. A leader must be well thought of as reputable and also credible. Number two, a leader must be a responsible father, a responsible mother, a responsible husband, or a responsible wife. If you see a leader who does not demonstrate appreciable level of responsibility in these categories, is not qualified to be called a leader. If you are a leader and you are not responsible to your children, you are not a responsible leader, and you are not qualified to be called a leader. If you are a leader, you are not responsible to your wife, you are not qualified to be called a leader, and you should not hold leadership position. And the same goes to the women. If you are a woman, if you are a woman leader and you are not a responsible wife, you are not qualified to be called a leader. Somebody might be asking, it's very difficult, or might be saying, it's very difficult for me to be responsible as a woman leader. Who tells you that? Where did you learn that from? Deborah, in the book of Judges, was an example of a leader who was responsible to her husband. He was responsible to the nation Israel. She was a responsible mother, a responsible wife, a political figure, and a religious leader. This woman alone combined at least 4 responsibilities, and yet she did not fail. So you must be responsible. If you see a man or a woman that is not demonstrating responsibility, please don't entrust leadership position to such a man or woman. Another precondition for becoming a leader is that you must be of good behavior. You must not be erratic in the way you behave. You must not be aggressive or wild in the way you behave. You must be a woman or a man of good behavior. People must be able to attest to the goodness of your behavior. Another precondition is that a leader must be hospitable. You must demonstrate generosity to other people. Leadership is not just about acquiring things for yourself. You see, I have worked with leaders, and thank God one of my leaders is here in our midst today. You know, and I want to tell you that one of the reasons why my relationship with Venerable Michael has been very enduring over the years was because of the way he carried himself as a leader. If he had not demonstrated that kind of responsibility or that responsible kind of leadership that you are looking for, that relationship would have broken down long time ago. But because he carried himself in such a way that you cannot just stop thinking about him, and that is why our relationship has endured up to this present moment. I remember when I was going to seminary, there are so many things he asked the church he was pastoring, where I was also assisting. There are so many things he mandated the church that they must do for me, and which I must tell you is not common among all leaders. And I know what I'm talking about. Some leaders are only there just for the things that will be accrued to them. They are only there for themselves. They don't care what happens to other people. I've worked with other leaders who only wants you to do the dirty jobs, and when the reward comes, they don't want you to partake of the reward. They want to acquire all the reward to themselves. But when it comes to you delivering responsibility, they want you to keep doing that. I have worked with such leaders, and I must also tell you that such relationship has also ended by the time each of us moved our separate ways. So a leader must be hospitable. You must be generous to a fault. You must be willing to give. You must be willing to accommodate people. You must be able to offer yourself as a drink offering. That is another precondition for becoming a leader. Another precondition of becoming a leader is that you must be knowledgeable and able to teach the same. Of what value are you as a leader if you don't know what you are talking about? What is the value? You don't have any value. We all know that in Nigeria today, we don't have leaders. We only have figurehead puppet in leadership. Because the man obviously is not accountable to anybody. He's just there to service himself. That is not the kind of leader we are looking for in our nation. We want a leader who knows what he's doing and is able to communicate the same to other people. Another precondition for becoming a leader is that a leader must not be given to drunkenness. Some people might be saying, thank God I don't drink beer, I don't drink wine. That is not the only way you can be involved in drunkenness. Any substance that can impair your sense of judgment can be classified as drunkenness. Be it weed, be it cocaine, be it heroin, There are some even prescribed medication that people take today that can make them to behave in a way that is not normal. That is those are the things you must avoid as a leader. You must not be given to drunkenness. As a leader, you must, or as somebody who is aspiring to become a leader, you must not be someone who assault or abuse others physically. I have seen leaders who slaps their team members, or who engage in physical combat with their team members. Such people should not be entrusted with leadership position. As a leader, another precondition is that a leader must not have money. Wow. Who is that person? Please, can you mute yourself? You know, when you disrupt the teaching, it disrupts the flow of what we are talking about. So another precondition of becoming a leader is that a leader must not be a lover of money. You must not be greedy, you must not be selfish, and you must not be covetous. These three things, they are almost synonymous to one another: greediness, selfishness, and covetousness. There is no one who possesses one without the other. If you see a greedy person, you have seen a selfish person. If you see a selfish person, you have also seen somebody who is also covetous. And you want to avoid that like a plague in your leadership journey. Another precondition for becoming a leader is that a leader must be a tenacious goal getter. People must be able to see your tenacity. People must be able to see you as as somebody who does not take no for an answer. You must be willing and ready to pay the price of leadership to get to your ultimate destination. You must be a goal getter. You see, people won't follow you if you are not a goal getter. If you are not somebody who is always willing to follow through your plan, people are not going to follow you. And you are not going to be successful as a leader if you don't have this quality. You must be a goal getter. Another precondition is that as a leader, you must be highly disciplined. In fact, discipline is the hallmark of personal leadership. That is the hallmark of personal leadership. The personal leadership we are talking about, transforming your leadership we are talking about, and the transforming of leadership we are talking about hangs on the platform of you being a disciplined person, or a disciplined man, or a disciplined woman. You must be highly disciplined. You must be able to engage in self-rules. You must be able to self-govern yourself. You are not looking for people to begin to tell you what to do. You are able to put certain barriers around yourself, certain standards that are not necessarily imposed on you by other people, but standard that you have imposed upon yourself. That is another precondition for becoming a leader. And a leader must not be a novice in his or her area of primary influence. I can't imagine a pastor, for example, who calls himself a pastor and you cannot deliver a good sermon. if you If you're a pastor and you can't deliver a good sermon, then you shouldn't be doing anything in the ministry. Because that is the most basic thing you have to do as a pastor. You have to be able to deliver good sermons, actionable sermon, not just good sermons that makes people to shout yeah yeah yeah, but sermons that moves people to action. You mustn't be you mustn't be telling us that you don't know how to prepare a sermon. So what are you a pastor for? Or you don't know how to care for people, how to keep oversight over people, you don't know how to do evangelism, then you don't have any business to be in the ministry. You must not be a novice. You must not demonstrate ignorance of the things you need to know in your primary place of influence. And finally, the precondition for becoming a leader is that you must have a good report among all people. So you are not just having a good report among the members of your congregation or among the members of your own group. Other people must be able to attest to the fact that you are a good man or you are a good woman. Your congregation must be able to attest to it. The community which you belong must be able to attest to it. Even your primary, your family member, your nuclear family member must be able to attest to your good report. You know, there are some pastors, they are good in the church, but they are not good in the house. There are pastors like that. They are good in the church, but they are monsters in the house. So everybody must be able to attest to the fact that you are good. Even non-believers must be able to attest to your goodness. Now let's move to other conditions or other attributes of a leader. You know, we're talking about the whole essence here is that we want you to develop an habit of a transformed leader. And we are looking into preconditions and the attributes you must cultivate for you to develop those habits of leadership. Number one, a leader must be a people person. You see, you cannot separate leadership and people. Leadership is always connected to leading people. If you take people out of the equation, then there is no leadership. And when we are talking about a leadership that is a people person, we are not talking about you manipulating people or you forcing people to do what they are not, their conscience does not want to do. It is not coercing or manipulating people. It is not forcing people to do things for you. But it is you knowing that you are there to serve the people. Like Jesus said, I am among you as he that serves. A leader must be among people as he or she that wants to serve. Another attribute of a leader is that a leader must be able to mentor others. You can still see he's still circling around the people. And that is why I believe the scripture says, in the multitude of people is the king's honor. If you take the people out of the equation, then there is no honor for the leader. Another attribute of a leader is that a leader must be able to organize a team. It's not just putting people together. You must be able to coordinate them in such a way that they produce results. You must be able to organize people. And if you don't have any of these qualities, the good news about them is that you can learn them. They are not gifts that comes with you when you are born. That is why we said leaders are both born and they are made. And these are what are the things you need. These are the things you need to do to be made as a leader. You must be able to organize a team. You must be able to communicate. A leader that cannot communicate will not be able to produce good results. Even your non-verbal communication, even people must be able to read your language, your body language, and be able to say that this is what our leader wants at this time. And they are able to deliver it to you. Communication can be both verbal and not verbal. And that is why you see that when a leader says something in an organization, but his behavior contradicts what he says, do you know what people will follow? It is his behavior. They are not going to follow what the leader is saying. They are going to follow what the leader is doing, because people always do what people see. Some people are saying the president of Nigeria is Mr. Integrity. Integrity, my foot. Nigeria has never been more corrupt than it is under the presidency of our current president. So that just remove the question of is not corrupt. People do what people see. So you must be able to communicate. And another attribute of a leader is that a leader must be charismatic. He must be charismatic. There are people who view charismatic in a negative way, but that is not always the complete truth. The truth is that as a leader, you are not going to be an effective leader if you don't have a charisma. But the problem is you don't want to focus only on your charisma, but then you want to cultivate a charismatic attitude as a leader. And what do we mean by charisma? It is your gifts. And it is what my friend says you need to develop to serve the world. Your charisma is your personal gift. That is your personal leadership. That is what needs to be cultivated, to be developed, to be refined, to be resourced, and then to begin to distribute to other people. You must be able to find your gifts. You must be charismatic. You must be able to pull people towards a goal through your charisma. Another attribute of a leader is that a leader must be passionate. People must be able to feel your passion. People must be able to see your passion. People must be able to see you doing what you are passionate about. Your passion talks about your conviction, what you are willing to die for, what you are willing to live for, what you are willing to do without being paid to do it. That is your passion. Another attribute of a leader is that a leader must be able to see the big picture. I said it earlier on that this is one of the things, this was my first realization when I assumed my first leadership position in year 20,000. A leader must be able to see the big picture. You must be visionary. That's what we are talking about. The Bible says where there is no vision, the people perish. You can see that what makes the people to be people is because of the vision of a leader. So when there is good vision, the people are better for it. Where there is no vision, the people are robbed of their dignity and of their honor. So a leader must be able to see the big picture. You must know where you are taking the people to, and you must be able to lead them toward that ultimate end. Another attribute of a leader is that a leader must know the art of true leadership. A leader must know the art of true leadership. And what is the art of true leadership? It is service to others. You see, you are not a leader because you want people to be doing obeisance to you. You want people to be prostrating for you. You want people to be bowing down to you. You want to become a little emperor. That is not leadership. That is not leadership. And we need to get this straight into our head. Leadership is not bossing people around. Leadership is serving people. Delightsome service to people. Willingness to serve other people. That is what leadership is. Now we want to talk about the context for becoming a transformational leader in the community. I want to believe that in leadership, context matters. Why are we developing leaders? Why do we need leaders? Why must there be leaders? And that is why we are talking about the context that creates the position of transformational leaders in the community. There are certain justifications for developing leaders within the community, and I'm going to mention 3 of those justifications for developing leaders within the community. When you see any handwriting of these 3 justifications, then know that we already have a context for becoming a leader within our community. Number 1, when the number of aspiring leaders continue to grow and multiply, like we are having this training with the Institute of Pastoral Education. What's the full name again, sir? The Institute of Pastoral Education.
Institute for Pastoral Education of Nigeria.
Yes, sir. So when we see people aspiring to continue to grow and multiply, then know that we already have a context, a justification for developing leaders. Another justification for developing leaders is when a problem arose within the community that requires leadership attention. Oftentimes, scholars call that a situational leadership or situational leadership. That is when a condition or situation or a crisis emerges that requires a leader to solve the problem. Then know that we need leadership in such a situation, or we need leaders in such situation. Another justification for development of leadership within the community is when the need for leaders becomes so obvious. Now, I've always said this to people. The fundamental problem in Africa, there are 2. You can point them down to 2. Number 1 is leadership problem. Number 2 is poverty. Those 2 problems are the fundamental problem we have in Africa. And the problem of poverty in Africa, you will agree with me, is also linked to bad governance, to bad leadership. So in other words, we are saying that the number one and the sole problem of Africa is leadership problem. And this cut across every cadre of leadership, whether in the church, whether in the politics, whether in our higher institution of learning, every strata of the society, there is decadence of leadership. We have leadership problem. And when now that we know that there is leadership problem, then there is need for leaders to emerge. And so because of the necessity for us to develop leaders at this critical time, then that is another justification for developing leaders. So whichever justification you think is suitable to your own case, these are the reasons why we must develop, or why you must desire to become a transformational leader within the community. Now, there are criteria to look out for in arriving at the choice of a community leader. Number one is, before you pick a leader, you must look for a leader that has honest reports. And I want to say that part of being reputable and credible as a leader is that you also possess an honest report. That is part of being reputable and credible as a leader. You must possess an honest report. Another criteria to look out for in arriving at the choice of community leader is that whoever wants to be a leader must of necessity possess divine endowment. There must be divine endowment. If there is no divine endowment, I don't know what such a leader wants to communicate to people. Because what people are following is not you as a person, just like my friend said. It is your gift. It is the gift of a man that will make room for him and brings him before great men. So you must have divine endowment. So when we are looking for leaders, don't just look for people who have mouth, who can make mouth. We are looking for people who have divine endowment, who are willing and ready to serve their gift to the world. Another criteria to look out for in arriving at the choice of community leader is that a leader must possess administrative skill. A leader must possess administrative skill. A leader must be able to coordinate. He must be able to organize. He must be able to direct. He must be able to lead. He must be able to guide. He must be able to control. He must be able to deploy resources. He must be able to utilize resources. These are the basic function of a leader. And if anybody does not possess this basic function, there is no way he can thrive as a leader. And that is why they are very, very fundamental. Honest report, divine endowment, and administrative skill. So let's move to the next slide. We want to talk about the transformational leader now. Now, who is a transformational leader? According to Langston University, I got this definition from their website. They say that a transformational leader is a leader who causes change in individuals and social system. In its ideal form, it creates valuable and positive change in followers with the end goal of developing followers into leaders. I want you to take note of certain things here. And there are 4 major things you can take note of here. Number 1 is that a transformational leader causes change. That is number 1. A transformational leader inspires people, because before you can cause a change, you have to motivate people to creating that change. They inspire people. Another thing about a transformational leader is that a transformational leader inspires people through what I call a repertoire of knowledge. They have this depth of knowledge that the people they are serving cannot just do anything less than to follow that leader for that repertoire of knowledge. And this is what some scholars call intellectual stimulation. A transformational leader is another thing you will need to you will discover from this definition is that a transformational leader must learn how to deploy people, and this is why they must be able to match people, the right people with the right function, right talent with the right function. That is what transformational leaders does. And I have discovered that in all the transformational leadership books that I have studied and all the transformational uh, lessons that I have undergone, I have discovered that these 4 basic things are always present. That is, a transformational leader must have an idealized influence. He must have inspirational motivation. He must have intellectual stimulation. And number 4, it must have individual consideration. And I have tried to, these are the 4 things you find in 4 major, these are the 4 major attributes of a transformational leader that you find in virtually all the leadership materials you find out there. And I have tried to modify it in my own way. These 4 things, I have also looked into transformational leadership, and I have been able to coin my own concept for what a transformational leadership stands for. I said a transformational leader possesses an ideology, and this is what scholars call idealized influence, but I call it ideology. If you are a leader and you are not, and you don't have an ideology, nobody is going to follow you. The reason why people follow leaders is because of their ideology, whether good or bad. It does not necessarily mean whether the ideology is good or bad. People follow people because of ideology, whether political, juggernaut, or whatever. The reason why they are following that person is because of an ideology. We are all Christians today because of the ideology of a man called Jesus. We are called Christians because we are called Christ followers. We believe in his ideology. That is why we are Christians. People who follows Islam believes in the ideology of Muhammad. is still the ideology of a man. People who follow Buddhism believes in the ideology of Buddha. And every other religion of the world, at the base of that religion is an ideology. And that is why you see people following that religion. Not because they just wanted that religion. It is because of their conviction about the ideology that the religion presents to them. A transformational leader motivates others through divine inspiration, which is inspirational motivation. You find it in other texts on transformational leadership. You must be able to inspire. That is what you are as a leader. If you can't inspire people, there is no way you can mobilize people to action. You must be able to pour yourself on people and move them into action. A transformational leader must possess a repertoire of knowledge. Wow. You must be a reserve or a reservoir of knowledge. Let me put it that way. You know, there is no, when Jesus is talking, you know what people do? They literally sit down. Whether it's on the mountain, you know, there was a time the Bible says he ran away from the people. What do you think the people did? They ran after him. They took other ships and ran. They went to double cross him because they cannot just withstand the level of knowledge that this man possesses. So as a leader, you must be a go-to person for people. People must be able to come to you for counsel. They must be able to come to you for consultation. They must be able to come to you for ideas. You must be a repertoire of knowledge that energizes others. This is where intellectual stimulation comes in, according to other scholars who have studied transformational leadership. A transformational leader is adept in deploying individual talents. This is what other scholars call individual consideration. What they are talking about is that a transformational leader must be able to match people with function. You are not putting a round peg in a square hole, or a square peg in a round hole. You are able to fit people into where they belong. And when you are able to do that as a leader, then you are going to have productivity within the organization. When you have that as a political leader, then there is going to be economic progress and prosperity in the leader. So let's move. We're trying to tidy things up now. What we have just said now, let's break it down into 4 segments. You know, we are still talking about we're talking about we're talking about the ideology of a leader, the divine inspiration of a leader, the repertoire, the possession of repertoire of knowledge of a leader, and the deployment of individual talents of a leader. Now, we are now trying to categorize it into 4 different sessions, which is number 1, as a transformational leader must have personal inward renewal. There must be change that comes from within. That the change you want to implement as a leader is not coming from outside. It has to come from within. It has to come from within to the outside, not from the outside to you. But the problem with many people is that they are looking for the change from the outside to come. But that is not the way it works. There has to be personal inward renewal. If you want to bring a change to the society, the change has to begin within you. Then that change will now graduate into changes in individuals. And how do you do this? By having positive influence on people. And it does not stop there. The change now graduates into the society or your community or your workplace or the church or whatever area of influence that you belong. You want to take that change. You can see the progression of that change. It begins from within you, then it goes to people that are around you, then it goes to your community. Then you must now begin to develop or mentor other leaders who will become a change agent as you are. And the way to do this is to model leadership to them and leading by example. So these are the 4 areas of change in a transformational leader. And you know, there is this anonymous quote that I put here. It says, just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. You know, a caterpillar practically goes through about 4 stages. It goes from the larva to pupa, from pupa to caterpillar, from caterpillar to butterfly. Those are the 4 stages. So in any of those 4 stages, you would have thought that that is the end of the caterpillar. Please mute yourself, please. If you are coming in, please mute yourself. Do we still have anybody still unmuted? Please mute yourself if you are coming in so that you don't disrupt the flow. You know, every stage of a butterfly is credible in itself, but you don't want to end your journey like a larva or like a pupa or like a caterpillar. You want to ultimately become the butterfly, where there is glory, where there is colorfulness, where there is glamour, where there is a reward for your leadership labor or responsibility. So you don't just want to end your leadership journey by just experiencing a personal inward renewal. You want to carry that into changing other people. And you want to go further by changing your community. And you want to go further by developing other people who will also change their own community. So we move to examples of transformational leaders in history. Somebody said, and I quote, Ita Ash Amara was the person who said it. He says, change is inevitable, but transformation is by conscious choice. Change is inevitable, but transformation is by conscious choice. You see, if you want to become a transformational leader, I can't decide that for you. You have to make up your mind to become one. Personally, I have made up my mind that I want to become a transformational leader. And that is why we've decided to develop the School of Transformational Leadership curriculum, which is what we are trying to pass across to you in this institute. Examples of transformational leaders in history. I have 3 powerful examples. You know, these people are not people that you would think of as extravagant or as troublesome. They are just the right kind of leaders that you want to model your life after. Number one is Mahatma Gandhi. Number two is Martin Luther King. Mahatma Gandhi is of India. Martin Luther King Jr. Was the civil rights activist who shook the whole of the United States of America. And then we want to talk about our own Nelson Mandela. And you are going to see how these three transformational leaders were able to learn from one another. Mahatma Gandhi started it, Martin Luther King took the baton, and Nelson Mandela followed in the same direction. Now let's talk about Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, the inspirer of civil rights movement. Mahatma Gandhi experienced inward renewal through his mother, an extremely pious lady who would not think of taking her meals without her daily prayers. Can you see where the inward transformation is coming from? It has to do with your religious piosity or piousness. There is a good connection to it. Mahatma Gandhi vowed total abstinence. No, so he learned this inward renewal from his mother. Now this is what he did as a result of that. He vowed total abstinence from meat, alcohol, and women to his wife and mother when he went to London to study law. You know, when you experience inward renewal, there are certain things that you will not do. There are certain things other people may be doing. You will not necessarily involve yourself with it. And that is why we said that for you to transform the man, please mute yourself, please. You know, this can be very distracting when we don't follow rules. Mahatma Gandhi, you can see that this is very connected to our personal inward renewal that we talk about when we are talking about how to transform the man. We said one of the things we said about transforming the man is that you must not conform according to the pattern or tradition or custom or values, the superficial values of this world. You must be a man or a woman of distinct character and quality. The name Mahatma was first applied to him in South Africa in 1914. That was not his real name. I hope you know that. Mahatma was not the real name of Gandhi. It was a title given to him in South Africa, which means great soul or a venerable, somebody who is held in high regard or esteem. The name that is now commonly used throughout the world. He employed non-violence resistance to lead the successful campaign for Indians independence from British rule. You know, Mahatma Gandhi was the first person to adopt the non-violent strategies. He was the first person to adopt that strategy. And after he effectively utilized that strategy in India. Martin Luther King followed the same principle. He adopted the same principle as his own philosophy. And that was how Martin Luther King was able to bring the whole of the United States to his feet or to his knee using that same strategy. And to a great extent, Dr. Nelson Mandela also utilized the same strategy. And you will see as we continue. Mahatma Gandhi inspired movement of civil rights and freedom across the world. Everybody is talking about Mahatma Gandhi today because Mahatma Gandhi decided to be the change that he wants to see in the world. Although Gandhi was very shy when he was younger, which is okay, everybody was shy. When I was younger, when I knew I was going into ministry, I used to be a very shy person. But over the years, I had to overcome that shyness, because there is no way you can be an effective minister if you still demonstrate shyness on the pulpit. It's okay if you are shy at the beginning, but you must work to overcome your shyness. Although Gandhi was very shy when he was younger, but his only companion or companions were books and school lessons. He was a man of books. He was always reading. He was always learning. And that is one of the ways to overcome your shyness. When you know more than what other people know, it will flow naturally out of you. You will not need to struggle to have something to say. It will naturally come out of you. And finally, Mahatma Gandhi spent 21 years in South Africa, where he developed his political view, ethics, and politics. And Mahatma Gandhi was credited for saying, for making this statement, that be the change you want to see in the world. Wow. Let's talk about Martin Luther King Jr. I call him the dreamer because of his popular speech on I Have a Dream. I believe the first day I had him, I had that dream. I had the speech. I was moved to tears because you could see the passion, you could see the energy with which Martin Luther King delivered that speech, and I could see why that speech has had so much effect on the United States of America at that time. Because even several years after he delivered the speech and I listened to it, personally, I was moved to tears myself. Now, Martin Luther King experienced personal inward renewal. So you can see that these transformational leaders, there is always something that is common to them. They always experience personal inward renewal. And that is that is where you always want to begin from to change your society or your community. You want to experience a rebirth within you. Martin Luther King experienced personal inward renewal through the inspiration from Christian beliefs and the non-violent activism of Mahatma Gandhi. Can you see that? That was where he had his renewal, his inward renewal from the Christian beliefs and from the non-violent activism of Mahatma Gandhi. As a Christian minister, King's main influence was Jesus Christ and the Christian's Gospels, which he would quote in his religious meetings and in public discourse. He will always talk about the love of God, the love of the Father, and you can see that this is always coming, even when he's making public presentation, because that is where he got his inward renewal from. Martin Luther King advanced civil rights of people of color in the United States through nonviolence and civil disobedience. You know what civil disobedience is? Civil disobedience is going against the law of the land that is not in tune to our human sensibility. These are laws that are enshrined in the constitution of the land, but Martin Luther King advised people to go against such law because they are laws that are against what we stand for as human. That is what we call civil disobedience. And it is okay to disobey the law of the land that are not sensible to our human dignity. He was the visible spokesman and leader in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. That was a period for almost more than 10 years. King was one of the leaders of the 1963 March on Washington, where he delivered his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. I believe that it was the speech of Martin Luther King in 1963 that eventually brought the emergence of Barack Obama as the President of the United States of America in 2008. I believe that speech had a role to play in the emergence of Barack Obama. Martin Luther King's Day was established as a holiday in cities and states throughout the United States beginning in 1971. The holiday was enacted at the federal levels by legislation signed by President Ronald Reagan in 1986. And Martin Luther King was quoted for saying, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." That's a great quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Now let's move to our own Nelson Mandela, the anti-apartheid activist. Nelson Mandela experienced personal inward renewal by being baptized in Methodist Church at the age of 9, attending church every Sunday. Although some biographers state that he never had a strong religious faith, but I want to believe that those religious value that was inculcated to him at that early age played a huge role in Nelson Mandela experiencing an inward renewal. And that is what is very, very fundamental and important to me. He was the first South African black president elected in a fully representative democratic election. His government was focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid by fostering racial reconciliation. He was committed to non-violent protests like Mahatma Gandhi. Can you see Gandhi always coming up. Gandhi came up in the case of Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi is showing up, and it is obvious because even the philosophy of Gandhi were developed in South Africa. So it is easy for Nelson Mandela to relate with Gandhi and his principle of non-violence protest. Mandela served 27 years in prison. That is, he was willing to die for what he believed. And he became an elder statesman and focused on combating poverty and HIV, AIDS through the charitable Nelson Mandela Foundation. He is held in deep respect within South Africa, no doubt about that, where he is often referred to as the father of the nation. Nelson Mandela was known for his ability to find common ground with very different communities. And that is why you could see him not retaliating against his oppressors. He tried to work with them so that the country can move forward. That is what a transformational leader do. That is the job of a transformational leader. It is fostering collaboration with other people, even with your enemy, to move the society forward. And Nelson Mandela was quoted for saying, "It is in your hand to make a better world for all who live in it." So the job of making the world a better place lies in your hand. And that is why you need to transform your leadership as an aspiring leader. And as I conclude, I like to conclude by saying that it takes a changed person to change the world. Thank you. Do we have any questions? If you have a question, let's put our question on the chat box, or if you want to ask directly, you are also welcome to do so. Do you have a question?
Yeah, ma'am, I have a question, but it's not really a question, but maybe a request from you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Olivia has a question. Maybe I should allow her to ask the question first
Okay.
before I ask mine. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Pastor Olivia. Or are you type? Oh, what are examples of superficial values? Okay. All right. An example of a superficial values could be, let me just use the example of a corruption as an example. You know, corruption in African society has become a value that people believes that if you want to be recognized in the society, uh, you must have what it takes to be able to. Uh, you must be very smart in the way you propagate corruption, and it has become so much valuable that people don't even feel ashamed for being corrupt again, particularly in Africa. I would say corruption is an example of a superficial value. And you, as a transformational leader, You don't want to conform to such values. You don't want to do it because other people are doing it. You don't want to keep doing it because you believe that is the only way people have been doing it to get results. For example, there have been cases of people asking somebody to write exams for them. And in African society, some people believe that this should be the normal thing. This is the way it is, or this is the way it should happen. We don't have to join such bad wagons. There could also be other superficial values that you may think of, and if you have any other one, you can just help with it. But that is one thing that I can easily come up with, which I think everybody now believes that everybody needs to do to be recognized, to be corrupt. They may not call it corruption, they may call it other names, but that is what it is: corruption. Getting things in an unlawful manner. That is one superficial value that I might want to say. Yeah, another question says, if position or title is the lowest form of leadership, what are the other forms? What are the other forms? Is there a particular form of leadership that is the highest? Wow, I think this is a very, very wonderful question. Now, we said there are different levels of, we didn't say it here, but I want you to know that there are different levels of leadership according to John C. Maxwell, who is known all over the world as the as a leadership expert. Dr. John Maxwell identified 5 levels of leadership. I don't know if I can remember all the 5 offhand, but I will try my best. Number 1, John Maxwell says that the first stage or level of leadership is positional. That means you are employed in an organization to occupy a position. And he said that is the starting point of leadership. But you don't want to remain in that level of position. You don't want to remain at that level of leadership. Then you want to move from leadership position, from the title, from the leadership position as a title bearer. Then you want to move to the next level of leadership, which is influence. That is, you are now trying to influence people. That is the second level of leadership. And come to think of it, leadership is influencing people. Whether you like it or not, whether for good or bad, if you cannot influence people, there is no way you can be an effective leader. People who have led, or leaders who have led people in this world, have been leaders of tremendous influence. You want to talk about Jesus, for example. You want to talk about Muhammad, for example. You want to talk about, let's even talk about contemporary example. You want to talk about Adolf Hitler, for example. This is somebody who influenced the entire nation to possess evil mind to go after other nations. That is influence. And that is another level of leadership. But that is not the kind of leader you want to become. You want to be a leader with good influence. Another level of leadership, according to Maxwell, is production level, where you begin to gain, you start with a position, then you begin to have influence over people, then you begin to gain reputation and credibility for your leadership influence. And that is why we said that leadership, as a leader, you must be reputable and credible. And when you become a reputable and credible leader, you begin to produce. That is the production level of leadership. And at every stage of this leadership, you have different people, subscribing to your leadership. You have different uh, people subscribing to your leadership at every stage. So at the reputational level, or at the level where your leadership begins to gain credibility, that is what Maxwell called the production level. That means your leadership is now producing results, and people are now beginning to follow your leadership. Then, and I think from the production level, you want to move to the reproduction level. The reproduction level is you are now beginning to train other leaders. You are now reproducing leaders like yourself. You move from production to reproduction of other leaders. And then you move from reproduction of other leaders to what I think he calls it self-actualization of leadership. Where you become, where your dream is now fulfilled as a leader. That is your legacy as a leader. So I think that is the best explanation I can give to those various categories or levels of leadership. And I believe I've been able to answer that question. Any other question? Thank you, sir, for appreciating the explanation. Any other question before we close?
Yes, I sincerely want to thank you and Brother Banwo,
Yes, sir.
Brother Kunle Banwo, for taking us today. I wouldn't want to say much because you have turned into a celebration of SF Michael. You played down the role you also played then for us, because if you're not a very supportive person, one would not be able to do anything. And we thank God for everything, sir.
Yes.
And we are enjoying the benefit today. The point is this: I want to ask if one, we will be able to have access to the recorded audio for us after the training, and some of the documents from you and Pastor Banwo, if we will have that privilege, because you can see that some of us from our side here, we're struggling with the usage of Zoom. It has been a very big challenge to.
I know.
We had that experience some years back. You remember you had that experience some years back when you invited me to actually preach at the harvest.
Yes, sir.
So, and our technology and the network is still behind the. Our network in Nigeria is still behind the century.
Yes.
But sincerely, today you have really opened our eyes, and we want to really thank you that we have, and our dear brother, that we have learned a lot from you. It's just a plea that if we have those materials, it will be added advantage to us. And some of us because they couldn't control the audio from their own system, they ran away from the line. So we'll be people if we help them.
Yes, sir.
We sincerely thank you. We appreciate you for taking us more than we booked for 3 hours. This is almost a 3.5 hours.
Yes, sir.
that you took us. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank
God will continue to bless your institute and bless your ministry, sir.
you. Amen, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, sir. All right. Let me stop recording.